The collision. Olivia Reed's hands trembled slightly as she put the finishing touches on what was possibly the most important cake of her career. The annual Wellington Charity Gala wasn't just any event. It was the gathering of Boston's elite, the power players whose single donation could exceed her yearly salary at the Grand Meridian Hotel. "It's perfect." "Liv," whispered Jasmine, her sous chef and closest friend, admiring the 5-tier masterpiece adorned with hand-painted sugar flowers. "This could be our ticket to getting investors for our bakery." Olivia nodded, carefully sliding the cake onto a rolling cart. "If I can impress Claudia Wellington tonight, she might actually consider backing us." She glanced at her watch. "I need to deliver this to the ballroom in 10 minutes. The service elevator was under maintenance, forcing Olivia to navigate the main lobby during peak check-in hours. She maneuvered carefully, hyper-aware of the delicate creation balanced on her cart. Just as she rounded the corner toward the grand ballroom, the hotel's revolving doors spun, admitting a group of suited executives. Time seemed to slow as a tall figure stepped directly into her path. Olivia swerved to avoid him, but the momentum carried the cart forward. She watched in horror as her masterpiece tilted, slid, and then launched itself directly onto the man's impeccably tailored charcoal suit. Vanilla buttercream and raspberry filling exploded across imported Italian wool. The silence that followed was deafening. "I'm so sorry," Olivia gasped, frantically grabbing napkins from the cart. "I didn't see you. I was rushing. The elevator was—" She finally looked up to see who she had assaulted with dessert. Her stomach dropped as she recognized Harrison Wells, tech genius and CEO of Quantum Innovations. His net worth was somewhere north of $11 billion, and his reputation for cold efficiency was legendary. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" asked a sharp voice. Not Harrison's, but a woman beside him, her face pinched with disdain. Olivia swallowed hard. "I'll pay for the dry cleaning," she offered weakly, knowing her entire savings wouldn't cover the suit. To everyone's surprise, Harrison Wells didn't immediately fire her. Instead, he studied her with curious blue eyes that seemed to see right through her professional facade to the panic beneath. "It's just a suit," he said, his voice unexpectedly gentle. He dabbed at the mess with a handkerchief, then added with the hint of a smile, "Though I admit, this isn't how I prefer to sample dessert." His security team and associates looked shocked at his reaction. Olivia was equally stunned. "The gala," she remembered suddenly. "The cake was for the Wellington event," he finished. "I'm attending." Harrison looked at the destroyed creation, then back at Olivia's name tag. "Well, Ms. Reed, it seems you have a problem." "Sir, we should go," urged his assistant. "You need to change before—" Harrison held up his hand. "What will you do now?" he asked Olivia. She took a deep breath. "I'll make another one." "In 2 hours?" "In 90 minutes," she corrected, determination replacing fear. "It won't be as elaborate, but it will be just as delicious." Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, perhaps, or curiosity. "Then I look forward to tasting it," he said simply before continuing toward the elevator, leaving a trail of buttercream and confusion in his wake. Olivia stood frozen until Jasmine grabbed her arm. "What just happened? Why aren't you fired?" Why wasn't he furious? "I have no idea," Olivia whispered, watching Harrison's retreating back. "But we need to make a new cake. Now." Little did she know that Harrison Wells, who had everything money could buy, had just encountered something his billions couldn't purchase: authenticity, and he was already planning how to see it again. A second chance. 2 weeks after the cake catastrophe, Olivia was piping rosettes onto cupcakes when Jasmine burst through the kitchen doors, waving her phone. "You're not going to believe this," she said, breathless. "Quantum Innovations wants to hire you personally for their annual leadership retreat. The email says Harrison Wells specifically requested you." Olivia nearly dropped her piping bag. "That's impossible. I ruined his suit and embarrassed myself in front of everyone." "Well, apparently he liked your replacement cake." "The offer is ridiculous." "Liv, 3 days at the Blackwood Resort, all expenses paid, and they're offering 5 times our normal catering rate." Olivia stared at the email, remembering those intense blue eyes that had studied her with such curiosity. It has to be a mistake. Or worse, a cruel joke. Or, Jasmine countered, it could be the financial boost we need for our bakery. Just think, if you impress these tech bigwigs, we might find investors there too. 3 days later, Olivia found herself in the pristine kitchen of the Blackwood Resort, unpacking specialty ingredients for the welcome dinner. The mountain retreat was breathtaking, all glass and stone perched on a cliff overlooking a crystalline lake. "Ms. Reed," a deep voice called from the doorway. Harrison Wells stood there, dressed casually in a simple black sweater and jeans that somehow looked as expensive as his ruined suit had. In the sunlight streaming through the windows, she noticed flecks of gray at his temples and laugh lines that his stern public photos never revealed. "Mr. Wells," she replied, straightening. "I was surprised by your invitation. Were you?" He stepped into the kitchen, examining her preparations with genuine interest. "Your emergency cake at the gala was exceptional. I wanted to see what you could create without a crisis looming." "So this isn't about the suit?" A smile touched his lips. "The suit was forgotten the moment I tasted your raspberry filling." He moved closer, examining the list of desserts she'd planned. "Though I admit I was impressed by more than just your baking skills that night." "My ability to cause disasters in public places?" she joked. "Your resilience," he corrected. "Most people crumble when they make mistakes around me. My reputation tends to intimidate," Olivia snorted before she could stop herself. "You mean because you've been called the Iceman in at least 3 business magazines?" Instead of offense, genuine laughter escaped him, a warm, rich sound that transformed his face. "You read those ridiculous profiles?" "Research," she admitted. "When a billionaire hires you after you've assaulted him with pastry, you Google him extensively." "And what did your research tell you?" Olivia measured vanilla extract, considering her words. That Harrison Wells built an empire from nothing, that he's brilliant but demanding, and that no one seems to know much about the man behind the algorithms. Something vulnerable flickered across his face before he masked it. An accurate assessment. He picked up an apple from her ingredients, tossing it lightly. "I have meetings until dinner, but I'd like to discuss your menu in detail later." "Perhaps over coffee, assuming you promise not to throw it at me this time?" The teasing note in his voice made her smile despite herself. "I'll do my best to contain my beverages." After he left, Olivia released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. There was something disarming about Harrison Wells when he wasn't surrounded by executives and security, something almost normal that made her forget the billions separating their worlds. That evening, as executives raved about her chocolate espresso torte, Olivia caught Harrison watching her from across the room. When their eyes met, he raised his dessert fork in a small salute that sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. "Dangerous territory, Liv," she whispered to herself, turning back to her kitchen. Getting attached to someone like Harrison Wells would be like trying to catch a shooting star, beautiful to witness, but certain to burn anyone who got too close. What she didn't know was that Harrison had already made up his mind that night in the hotel lobby. This woman who created beauty with her hands and faced disasters with determination was someone worth knowing, regardless of what his board of directors might think. "Sugar and steel. Tell me about your dream bakery," Harrison said, leaning against the kitchen counter as Olivia prepared breakfast pastries for the retreat's final day. It was nearly midnight. The rest of the resort was quiet, but Harrison had wandered in after his late meetings, loosened tie and slightly rumpled hair suggesting a long day of negotiations. "You should be sleeping," she pointed out, rolling out puff pastry. "Don't you have that big presentation tomorrow?" "I'd rather hear about your ambitions than rehearse mine again," he replied, helping himself to a cup of coffee. "Besides, I've noticed you work differently when you think no one's watching." "It's fascinating." Olivia felt her cheeks warm. Over the past 3 days, Harrison had found numerous excuses to visit the kitchen, their conversations stretching from professional to personal with surprising ease. "My bakery," she began, focusing on the dough, would be small but special. A place where everything is made with intention. No mass production, just thoughtful creations that make people pause their busy lives for a moment of joy. She glanced up. That probably sounds silly to someone who builds technology that changes the world. Harrison shook his head. Not at all. Purpose is purpose, regardless of scale. He picked up a paring knife, automatically helping her slice apples as if they'd worked together for years. The domestic simplicity of the moment struck Olivia as surreal, a billionaire tech genius doing kitchen prep with her at midnight. What about you? She asked. Was building quantum always your dream? Something shadowed his expression. Building something meaningful was being in control of my future, he sliced with precision. I grew up with nothing, watching my mother work 3 jobs after my father left. Technology became my escape, then my obsession, then my life. And now, his hands stilled. Now I have an empire that demands constant attention and a life that exists primarily in boardrooms and private jets. The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. Until this weekend, I couldn't remember the last time I actually helped prepare food. That's sad, Olivia said simply. Harrison laughed, but it held no humor. Most people would call it successful. Success and happiness aren't always the same thing. Their eyes met across the counter, and something electric passed between them, a recognition of the unexpected understanding they'd found in each other's company. Harrison's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. His expression closed as he read the message. My team needs me. Apparently there's an issue with tomorrow's announcement. As he turned to leave, Olivia called after him. Harrison! His name felt intimate on her lips. What makes you happy? Not successful. Happy. He paused in the doorway, the harsh hallway light silhouetting his tall frame. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. This, he said finally, gesturing to the kitchen, to the space between them. Conversations that aren't about stock prices. Helping with something tangible. Simple things I'd forgotten existed. He smiled sadly. Dangerous admissions for a man in my position. After he left, Olivia sat on a stool, trying to make sense of the warmth blooming in her chest. Harrison Wells was nothing like she'd expected. Beneath the polished exterior and intimidating reputation was a man who seemed almost lost, surrounded by everything yet missing something essential. The next morning, as the executives prepared to depart, Harrison sought her out one last time. I have a proposition, he said, handing her a business card with his private number written on the back. Quantum is hosting a series of innovation dinners next month. I'd like you to create the desserts, each one representing a different aspect of our new platform. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you an opportunity, he corrected. One that pays extremely well and could introduce you to potential investors for your bakery. She turned the card over in her hands. And it has nothing to do with wanting to continue our midnight conversations? The smile that touched his lips was genuine. I'd never mix business with pleasure, Ms. Reed. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. But I would very much like to see you again, with or without pastry as an excuse. As his car disappeared down the mountain road, Olivia knew she was standing at a crossroads. The rational part of her understood that getting involved with Harrison Wells, professionally or personally, was like trying to tame a hurricane. The irrational part remembered how naturally they'd worked side by side in the quiet kitchen, and how for brief moments the billionaire mask had slipped to reveal just a man searching for something genuine in a world built on appearances. Bitter ingredients. He's using you, Olivia. Men like Harrison Wells don't seriously pursue pastry chefs. The words came from Eleanor Wells, Harrison's mother, who had unexpectedly appeared at Olivia's small apartment 3 weeks after the retreat. The elegant older woman looked completely out of place among Olivia's mismatched furniture and cookbook collection. I'm catering his innovation dinners, Olivia replied carefully. It's a professional relationship. Eleanor's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched. Is that why you've been photographed having coffee with my son 4 times in the past week? Why he mentions your name in our Sunday calls? Olivia's heart stuttered. Harrison talked about her to his mother? I raised Harrison from nothing, supported his dreams, watched him build an empire, Eleanor continued. I won't let him throw away everything for a fleeting infatuation. The board is already questioning his judgment. After Eleanor left, Olivia sat among her recipe books, troubled. The innovation dinners had been wildly successful. her dessert concepts perfectly complementing Harrison's technological vision. But it was the hours after each event, when they would talk into the night about everything and nothing, that had begun to feel dangerous. Harrison had slowly revealed more of himself, his childhood in a struggling Boston neighborhood, his scholarship to MIT, the early failures before his breakthrough. She'd shared her own journey, her parents' disappointment when she abandoned medical school for culinary arts, the small inheritances from her grandmother that she'd saved for her bakery dream. The ringing of her phone interrupted her thoughts. Nathaniel Price, Harrison's chief rival and the founder of Helix Technologies. Ms. Reed. His smooth voice greeted her. I've been impressed with your work at Quantum's events. I'd like to offer you an exclusive contract with Helix, triple whatever Wells is paying you. Olivia frowned. That's very generous, but Harrison Wells collects people like trophies, Ms. Reed. When he tires of them, he discards them with generous severance packages and glowing recommendations. Just ask his former fiancée. The comment landed like a slap. Harrison had never mentioned a fiancée. Later that evening, as they walked through the public garden after the latest innovation dinner, Olivia finally gathered her courage. Who was she? She asked quietly. Your ex-fiancée? Harrison stopped, tension immediately visible in his shoulders. Who told you about Victoria? Does it matter? The distance between them suddenly felt vast. You never mentioned her. Because it ended 3 years ago. His voice turned careful, measured. Victoria was the daughter of my largest investor. The relationship made business sense. Made business sense? Olivia echoed. Is that how you approach all your relationships? Cost-benefit analysis? Harrison reached for her hand, but she stepped back. Olivia, that's not— Your mother visited me, she interrupted. And Nathaniel Price called with a job offer today. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by anger. Price is trying to manipulate you. And my mother— He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. She's protective. She doesn't understand what's happening between us. And what is happening, Harrison? Because from where I stand, it seems like I'm being pulled into some corporate power game while foolishly developing feelings for someone whose world I'll never belong in. The raw honesty hung between them as rain began to fall. Gentle at first, then harder. That's not fair, he said finally, rain soaking his expensive coat. I've been more real with you than anyone in years. Maybe, Olivia admitted, blinking against the raindrops. But your world is already closing ranks against me. Your board members, your mother, your competitors, they all see me as either a liability or a pawn. Since when do you care what others think? He challenged, stepping closer. The woman who faced me down after destroying my suit doesn't seem like someone afraid of obstacles? I'm not afraid of obstacles, she whispered. I'm afraid of being a footnote in Harrison Wells' complicated life. Another relationship that made business sense until it didn't. Before he could respond, she turned and walked away, ignoring his calls as the rain washed away the tears on her cheeks. That night, she received 2 messages. The first, from Nathaniel Price, increasing his offer and subtly hinting at information he had about Quantum's financial troubles. The second, from Harrison's assistant, confirming the final innovation dinner was still scheduled for Friday. Olivia stared at her ceiling, torn between her growing feelings for Harrison and the harsh reality their worlds presented. Perhaps Eleanor was right. Perhaps some differences couldn't be bridged, no matter how genuine the connection. Sweet endings. The final innovation dinner was Olivia's masterpiece, a 7-course dessert journey representing Quantum's evolution. As guests marveled at her creations, she remained professionally detached, avoiding Harrison's gaze across the elegantly appointed ballroom. They hadn't spoken since their argument in the rain 3 days earlier. Halfway through the evening, Nathaniel Price arrived uninvited, making a beeline for Olivia in the kitchen. Have you considered my offer? He asked, leaning against her workstation. Harrison's new platform is impressive, but Helix has information suggesting Quantum is overextended. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss leadership concerns. Olivia carefully plated a delicate chocolate structure. "Mr. Price, I appreciate your interest, but I won't be used as a pawn in your corporate rivalry." "It's not about rivalry," he insisted. "It's about recognizing talent. Harrison is distracted, by you, ironically. The board sees it as proof he's losing focus." A throat cleared behind them. Harrison stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Nathaniel," he said coolly, "crashing my event seems beneath even you." Price smiled. "Just discussing business opportunities with Ms. Reed. She's quite talented. You should be careful about mixing professional admiration with personal interest." After Price departed, tension crackled between them. "Is it true?" Olivia asked quietly. "About the board meeting?" Harrison loosened his tie with a weary gesture. "Yes. My recent decisions have been questioned, particularly my personal choices." The weight of those words hung heavy. Before she could respond, his assistant appeared, urgently requesting his return to the main event. An hour later, as Olivia prepared to serve the final course, commotion rippled through the ballroom. Harrison had taken the stage unscheduled, his presence commanding immediate silence. "Many of you know me as the architect of quantum success," he began, his voice carrying through the room. "What you may not know is that I've spent years building something I'm no longer certain I want to live in." Murmurs swept through the crowd. Board members shifted uncomfortably. "Tomorrow, my leadership will be evaluated based on metrics and projections. Before that happens, I want to share a different measurement of success." His eyes found Olivia at the back of the room. "These past weeks, I've been reminded that empires built without joy are just elaborate cages." He stepped away from the podium, moving through the stunned crowd directly toward her. "Harrison," she whispered as he approached, aware of all eyes on them. "What are you doing?" "Something I should have done in the rain," he answered, taking her hands. "Choosing what matters." Eleanor Wells stood from her table, expression alarmed. "Harrison, this is hardly the venue for—" "Mother," he interrupted gently. "You taught me to pursue what I value. That's all I'm doing." He turned back to Olivia. "I built Quantum believing success would fill the emptiness. Then you crashed into my life with buttercream and honesty, and suddenly boardrooms felt hollow compared to midnight conversations in a kitchen." Olivia's heart hammered. "Your board, your company, will survive with or without me as CEO," he finished. "But I'm beginning to understand I might not survive without moments that matter, without possibility, without you." The ballroom had fallen completely silent. "I'm still just a pastry chef with a dream," she reminded him. Harrison smiled. "And I'm just a boy from Dorchester who got lucky with coding. Titles and bank accounts don't define us. Choices do." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing not a ring, as the gasping crowd seemed to expect, but a key. "This is for a storefront on Newbury Street. Consider it an investment in your bakery. No strings attached, whether or not you want me in your life." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "An investment? In your dream?" he clarified. "Not a gift, not a bribe. A business partner who believes in you, if you'll have me. The personal relationship?" He swallowed visibly. "That's entirely separate, entirely your choice." Eleanor stepped forward. "Harrison, you're risking everything." "No, Mother," he countered, never taking his eyes off Olivia. "For the first time, I'm risking the right things." Olivia stared at the key, then at the man who'd somehow crashed through her defenses. "Partnerships require trust," she said finally, "and equal footing." "We can figure out the details," he promised. "I just know I want a life with more flower-covered countertops and fewer executive boardrooms." In that moment, surrounded by Boston's elite and corporate power players, Olivia made her choice. She reached up and smudged a bit of chocolate ganache onto Harrison's cheek. "There," she said with a trembling smile. "Now we're even. No more perfect suits, No more pretending to be what others expect. The kiss that followed caused scandalized whispers and one audible cheer from Jasmine at the back of the room. Eleanor Wells closed her eyes in resignation, while several board members exchanged calculating glances. 1 year later, Sweet Collision Bakery opened its doors on Newberry Street. The line stretched around the block, partly for Olivia's renowned pastries, and partly to glimpse the unusual sight of former tech CEO Harrison Wells happily working the espresso machine, flour dusting his no longer perfect suit, his smile genuine for the first time in photographs. The gossip columns called it a business disaster. Olivia and Harrison called it the sweetest collision of worlds either could have imagined.